With Doctor Who currently on the ropes, with many even believing that the show is on the verge of being cancelled, I thought I'd take a look back at simpler and less divisive times by revisiting my personal favourite regeneration in the series, that of the 10th Doctor. One of the reasons why Doctor Who is so popular and why it's also so near and dear to my heart is because of its uniqueness. Due to the lead character being a Time Lord, he's able to survive fatal injuries. However, surviving these injuries does come at a cost. Instead of facing death, he must go through a regeneration, which is a process where every cell in his body is replaced, resulting in him gaining a new face, body and personality. It also allows the show to keep airing, whilst the previous lead actor goes off to pursue other roles. Whilst the Doctor's regeneration has been presented in many different ways throughout the show's entire run, modern Doctor Who has exclusively portrayed regenerations as a massive burst of fiery energy that shoots out the Doctor's head and hands. It's an explosive passing of the torch, acting as a goodbye to the Doctor you've been watching for years and a hello to the new Doctor that you'll hopefully be watching for years to come. It's a signal to the audience that an era has ended and a new one has begun. So why do I think that the 10th Doctor's regeneration is the best in the series? Well, first, let me admit my bias. The 10th Doctor is my favourite Doctor, and unless we get a new Doctor who simultaneously delivers a perfect performance whilst going on extremely well written adventures, I don't see that changing anytime soon. However, I am hoping that I'll be able to justify why 10's regeneration is the best in a way that doesn't just come across as he's my favourite Doctor, so of course his regeneration is the best. So what is my criteria for deciding which regeneration is the best? Well, first, why is the Doctor regenerating? What has killed him? Has he been exterminated by the Daleks whilst jumping in front of a defenceless child to save them? Or has he just stuck a knife in a toaster? Second is the scene itself. How does the Doctor bow out? What does he do? What does he say? Then there's the audience's reaction. What effect is the regeneration having on the audience? And lastly, how is our introduction to the next Doctor? It takes two to tango in a regeneration, so how is the first scene with our new Doctor? I'm not just judging the Doctor's goodbye, I'm also judging his hello. So with that criteria set, how about we hop into why the 10th Doctor's regeneration is the best in the series? So why does the Doctor regenerate? What's killed him? Well, first, we need to actually look before the 10th Doctor's final episode. Also spoilers for Doctor Who, obviously. Leading up to David Tennant's exit, we had known for a while that his tenure as the Doctor was coming to an end. Even the Doctor himself knew that death was nearly upon him.
He will knock 4 times.
FBI, open up!
And the Doctor was far from ready to meet his maker. In fact, his reluctance to die even led him down a darker path, as best showcased in the glorious Waters of Mars episode. He had altered a fixed point, something he shouldn't have done, and was now declaring himself the Time Lord victorious. And his only response to being told that what he was doing was wrong was a simple
tough.
Luckily, one woman's strength is enough to snap him out of it. But by this point, it had become clear to both us and the Doctor just how fearful he is of death. If even for a second, he considered altering time just so that he could survive. And then we get to 10's last 2 episodes, where he faces off against the Master, a man with the sound of drums ringing in his ears, a rhythmic sound of 4 repeating beats. And so the Doctor takes on his greatest foe, as well as James Bond for some reason, and somehow comes out on top. He's alive. Yet his jubilation is short-lived, as he hears those 4 dreaded knocks. Wilf, a man the Doctor would have been proud to call father, had got himself trapped after helping someone. And the only way for the Doctor to be able to free Wilf is for him to go into the area next to him, be subjected to a ton of radiation, and die. Understandably, the Doctor loses it in one of the best moments in the entire show.
I could do so much more! So much more!
He may have lost his way near the end, but the Doctor would never leave Wilf to die. And he's furious that he's the type of person who can't even let one old man meet his end, even though it would be so easy to do just that. So this Doctor so afraid of death, this Doctor so young compared to his other incarnations, steps into the chamber and sacrifices himself so that an old man can live. This Doctor dies in a way most befitting of who the Doctor really is. He dies saving someone, and you can just see how much pain he's in as the radiation floods into him. It's a fabulous death. Now that we know why he's regenerating, how is the actual regeneration scene?
We will sing to you, Doctor. The universe will sing you to your sleep.
After visiting all his companions and taking one last look at Rose, the Yude plays a song for him as he slowly hobbles into the TARDIS. It's such a beautiful piece of music, perfectly encapsulating the mood of the scene. Without the utterance of a word, he removes his coat and throws it to the side. Flicking some switches to get the TARDIS going, he takes one final look at the console. And then after his final steps to the Doctor, we push in on him as he says his final words.
I don't want to go.
Words that would forever be burned into my memory. And then BAM! We get this fire explosion that just tears the TARDIS apart, perfectly representing both the Doctor's and the viewer's emotions. By this point in modern Doctor Who, we'd only had two Doctors, Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. This wasn't the first regeneration that audiences at the time had dealt with, but the 10th Doctor's regeneration was very different to the 9th's, and both were reflective of the audience's feelings on the situation. When Christopher Eccleston was the Doctor, the show was a big hit, however things fell apart very quickly, with his relationship with the showrunner and producer breaking down irreparably, resulting in him choosing to leave the show. On the 30th of March 2005, 4 days after the first episode Rose was released, it was confirmed that Christopher Eccleston would be leaving the role of the Doctor, allegedly due to fear of being typecast. This meant that for almost the entirety of Eccleston's run, people knew he was exiting the show, which meant that when it came time for him to regenerate, the emotion that viewers were likely feeling was anxiety. The first season with him had been so good. Would the show survive without him? He's really good in the role. Who even is this David Tennant fella? I've never seen Casanova, but apparently he was good in that. And so that's what Christopher Eccleston's regeneration reflects. Because unlike 10, the 9th Doctor has a companion with him. He has Rose. And so instead of focusing on himself, he focuses on her. He tells her about what's happening to him and calms her and reassures her. But that's not just for Rose, that's for the audience too. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Even if I'm not here anymore, you don't need to be concerned. And then he explodes into David Tennant.
Phrasing?
By the time we got to David Tennant's regeneration, the show was at its peak popularity, and David Tennant had already cemented himself as one of the most iconic and popular Doctors in the show's history. A fact that still hasn't changed and is arguably truer now than it was back then. Basically, David Tennant was the Doctor. He was synonymous with the character and people couldn't bear to see him go. And that is what's reflected in 10's regeneration. He doesn't want to go because we don't want him to go. That's why there's no goodbye speech, no last words of reflection, just the music playing as both he and us hope for the inevitable to take just a little longer. It's the final touch of his eyes staring up that gets me, of him taking in every last detail of his final moments, refusing to close for so long. And then they finally shut as Matt Smith arrives.
Perfection.
So we got this amazing death scene for the 10th Doctor, and this amazing final scene for him too, and an amazing response from the audience as well. But what's the last piece of the puzzle that we're missing? That's right, 11's introduction. In the span of basically a minute, Matt Smith takes the torch past to him and completely crushes it, with him coming into the world screaming, showing us the very last bit of 10's pain at the start of 11's life. We then watch this new Doctor begins hurriedly inspecting himself, discovering who he is during all this chaos. I still love that it takes him a second to realise that the TARDIS is actually crashing. Typical 11, always missing the obvious. But with much excitement, he runs over to the TARDIS console and shouts out his brand new catchphrase. Which brings an end to this brilliant transition of actors. Similarly to Nine's Regeneration speech to Rose, this bit with 11 is meant to relax the audience, to let them know that things are going to be okay, even though David Tennant has left the show. It may be a different actor, but this is still the Doctor, and yes, he's still annoyed that he's not a Ginge.
I'm still not Ginger.
An era may have ended, but this first scene with Matt Smith is more than enough to let people know that the future would be bright with this Doctor at the wheel of the TARDIS. So there you have it, all my reasons for why the 10th Doctor's Regeneration gets top marks from me. You could even say that it gets a 10 out of 10. Like and subscribe, you know you want to. However, before we wrap things up, I thought I'd quickly rank the other modern Doctor Who regenerations so you get my thoughts on them too. However, I'm only doing modern Who because I've not seen enough of classic Who for me to give my opinions on those regenerations. So anyway, let's start with number 8. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. The bi-generation takes last place for a multitude of reasons. First, I just hate it. I hate that I'm now watching what is basically a clone of a character that has existed for decades. I would have much rather he regenerated normally. And secondly, because all I can think about now is what is 14 up to. Sutek literally killed everything, all whilst 14 was down the road with his own TARDIS, may I add. It doesn't make sense for him to not get involved. This is basically another case of why don't the Avengers ever help when it's not their film. This is an issue created by Russell T Davies wanting to do something different, and it hasn't worked, at least for me. And I genuinely think that the bi-generation will be something that won't be looked back on favourably. Even ignoring the bi-generation premise, taking into account my criteria from earlier, this is certainly the worst. Why? Because it's also rushed. First, the Doctor has a very crap death, getting lasered by Barney, which is also how 13 died. Then in no time, he's regenerating with the most generic and short of a goodbye speech accompanying it. Even our hello to the new Doctor isn't very good, because David Tennant's mere presence is enough to overshadow Ncuti Gatwa, and the audience response is just one of confusion, with most people ending up googling what the bi-generation even means, and whether Tennant is still staying around. This easily comes in last place because every aspect of the regeneration was bad. In my opinion anyway. 7th place goes to the War Doctor's regeneration. I'll admit, I've only included this one because I said I would include all modern regenerations, so this one counts by default. The regeneration itself is fine, but given the lack of audience connection to this Doctor, I think this is where it should go. Now things get controversial because I'm placing 12 very low. Now I do understand this placement annoys you, since Peter Capaldi was a great and honestly underrated Doctor, and his regeneration is actually pretty good. In fact, outside of 14, I think every modern Doctor has had a good regeneration, but based on my criteria, I have to place 12 here. Firstly, because of his death. Whilst the Doctor does sacrifice himself, which I love to see, I don't actually like that he goes out in a literal blaze of glory. It's just a little too action hero-y for me. I prefer when the Doctor uses his brain to solve problems instead of his screwdriver and some bombs. Also, whilst the Doctor has killed before, and will kill again, I don't like that he's blowing up the Cybermen. I prefer when the Doctor tries to deal with things like a pacifist. Essentially, the reason why I don't like the 12th Doctor's death is because it doesn't encapsulate how I personally view the Doctor compared to how 10's did. Although obviously, with how varied the Doctor is, we're all going to see him differently. What really doesn't help though is how dreadful the effects are for the 12th Doctor's death. From the explosions to the laser that kills him, down to the regeneration energy on his hand. It just does not look good, and that does bring down the scene. But I will say this, Peter Capaldi absolutely crushed it in the acting department, and he continued to do so in the actual regeneration scene too. He's brilliant as always, and his speech is genuinely great as well. However, I don't like the camera work and how much 12 is moving in his final moments. Most regenerations are still and calm, mainly due to how painful regenerating is, subduing the Doctor's movements. Even 10, who was so brimming with emotion, moves slowly during his regeneration, since you know he's dying and all. Comparatively, 12 is just a little too erratic, and I know I'm nitpicking here as if I wasn't before, but I don't like how 12, just ever so slowly, goes into his regeneration position. Then there's 13's introduction, which actually starts quite strong before quickly falling apart, just like the TARDIS. Why does that even happen, by the way? It seemed fine for quite a while there, before suddenly just dumping her out like a dodgy takeaway. The TARDIS just starts exploding for seemingly no reason. Basically, I don't like the introduction to 13 because it gives us too little time to reflect on 12's exit and 13's entrance before we're thrown into the next piece of action. 5th place is going to 13. She loses brownie points for taking a laser to the face. It's just a bit random. Other times the Doctor dies due to sacrificing themselves or old age. But here, the Doctor dies because the Master pressed a button that caused the thing in the sky to alter its aim or something and just blast her. Fortunately, the actual regeneration scene is quite good. We get a short but sweet speech, as well as some beautiful music to accompany the regeneration. Although since I did it with 12, I'll also do it with 13. I don't like how she gets into her regeneration T-pose. I wish it was more snappy and less flowy. However, the visual effects are very strong, and it even ends with the return of David Tennant, which for some people was a very pleasant surprise since Ncuti Gatwa had already been cast as the new Doctor. Unsurprisingly, David returns to the role like a well-worn glove, with his comments about his teeth and his exclaims of being the perfect way to bring him back. This regeneration was a lovely goodbye to a very divisive and controversial Doctor and era, and a hopeful sign of good things to come. I struggled a little with the next two Doctors, but I'm giving 4th place to 11. First, I love the fact that the youngest actor to play the Doctor dies of old age, with his initial regeneration being fantastic. It's a wonderful speech and a great bit of acting from Matt Smith as we see this old, decrepit, hopeless man suddenly regain the energy of his youth as he learns that he's going to regenerate once again, with him literally going nuclear, which was awesome. And since the Doctor stayed in this place for so long protecting everyone, I chalk this up to more self-sacrifice. Then we have the regeneration scene itself. 11's speech is just phenomenal. His response to his death is the complete opposite of 10's, one of acceptance and satisfaction, and to see Amy again would make anyone emotional. Though of course, Rory is forgotten, as always. Even Clara is really good here, not wanting to say goodbye to her friend. It's just so brilliant. But then he sneezes into Peter Capaldi, and that kinda ruins the regeneration a little for me. Technically, he did already regenerate when he went nuclear, but I wish the transition into Peter Capaldi was actually more of a transition and not so much of a jump cut. Fortunately, 12's introduction is great. I especially like the line, "It's just that sneezing to Capaldi really did knock a lot of the wind out of this scene's sails, at least for me." I've decided to give the bronze medal to 9 because whilst 11's goodbye is better, I think every other aspect of 9's regeneration is better than the 11th Doctor's. First, there's 9's death. Again, more self-sacrifice. Except this time, it's for the woman he loves and the person who's canonically, I believe, to be the most important person the Doctor has or will ever meet in his entire life. And the dialogue is just so good.
I think you need a doctor.
As I said earlier in the video, I love the reassuring nature of Nine's regeneration, and there'll always be something sad about saying goodbye to Christopher Eccleston. As the Doctor, he was absolutely fantastic. I really wish that we saw more of him, and I love the way that he snapped into his regeneration. Now that is how it's done, with the effects for this regeneration probably being my favourite in all of Doctor Who. I love how Nine's face turns into Ten's, especially with how Tennant's hair comes in. And we can't forget that this is also the introduction to the 10th Doctor, with him just coming in and picking up from where Nine left off. It's all just really good across the board. Admit it, you forgot about this one. But if the War Doctor makes it, then so does Doctor number 8. Firstly, I like that he dies because of the Time War, with him trying to rescue someone, but they won't let him due to the implications of him being a Time Lord, as they choose to die instead of accepting his salvage, which gets 8 killed in the process too. An excellent death scene followed by an even better regeneration scene. In these few minutes of screen time, Paul McGann makes you long for more. He's so good that it makes you sad that we've seen so little of this incarnation of the Doctor. What I love about his performance is that we're seeing the Doctor give up here. He's throwing in the towel. The Doctor has always tried to do the right thing, but here he gives up on that and decides to become a warrior instead, with him regenerating in such agony. This regeneration is so high up for me because I love the wider implications of it. When the Doctor regenerates, it's a young John Hurt that he becomes, revealing that he was stuck as the War Doctor for a very long time. It's a very tragic and very different regeneration for the Doctor, and also serves as one of the most important in the show's entire history. Can they please announce a spin-off where we get to see Paul McGann's adventures as the 8th Doctor? At the very least, give me a multi-Doctor story for an episode. And then of course, number 1 is the 10th Doctor's regeneration, but I've already explained why. Also, I do want to just quickly shout out the 5th Doctor's regeneration. Overall, it's a great story that they used to end his tenure, and I love that the Doctor dies due to stepping in a puddle. Feels like a very realistic end for someone travelling through time and space. And again, he sacrificed himself so his companion can live. Also, I love the 5th Doctor's speech, but I would be lying if I said I was looking at Peter Davidson at any point in that scene.
Peter is notorious now for claiming that his death was upstaged by my cleavage.
There's quite a nice shot of her cleavage.
But that is the end of the video and my opinions. But what's your opinion on all of this? Which regeneration is your favourite? That can be from either Classic Who or New Who. Also, who's your favourite Doctor? And what do you think about the current Doctor Who series with Ncuti Gatwa? I've already made a video detailing my thoughts on it, so do let me know yours in the comments below. And whilst you're down there, do be sure to hit the like button. It significantly boosts this video in the YouTube algorithm. And if you're feeling especially generous, then do consider subscribing. I'd love to have you become a regular viewer. But until next time, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Bye bye!